Good morning. Maurice, can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes, I can.
Fantastic. I just wanted to do a little bit of a sound check between us while we're waiting for Rain to join us. Rain, are you here yet?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, wonderful. We can hear you quite well.
Okay, I'm actually switching my audio device.
Okay.
Okay, can you still hear me?
We can still hear you.
Great. Perfect.
Wonderful. And I see we have one attendee on the line, so I'm hoping for three others. But I do think we can start promptly, and we will, as we had talked about before, Amaris is going to press the record button, and I will make some notes about the topics so that we can properly post this for folks to use later.
Sounds good.
Wonderful. I see a second person has come on the line. Well, welcome to our Milo office hours today. It is 12 o'clock noon and we're going to start promptly. We have an hour today to get through some of the questions that folks are going to have for myself and Rain today. I see we have three people with us today. I'm very excited. Welcome. Thank you for being here. I have Laurel, Rain, and Scott that are all listed on the line, and actually I will be attempting to unmute you so that we can begin going through with each of you what your questions are. In case there's any commonality in some of your questions, we will cover those first, and then we will get to each of you with your individual questions. And just to keep in mind, we are recording this session so that we can help others out and they can watch this on their own time on demand at a later date. And just to remind you, my name is Elizabeth Leslie, and I'm the Communications Manager at the League of Women Voters of California. We are based in Sacramento, as many of you know, and I've just moved into a new office space right near the Capitol. I also have on the line our tech guru, Rain Michaels, who will be providing lots of exciting educational tutorials today for each of your live questions. And lastly, I also have Amaris Lebron on the line today, who was on the end of many of the emails that folks send to us every day. So feel free to ask us any questions, email us afterwards, or you can put questions in chat. But I'm going to go ahead and unmute our group of folks, and perhaps I will start with the first name on the list, which is Laurel, and we will see what questions she has. Then we'll move to Rain, see what some of her basic questions are, and also Scott. And again, that's in case there's any overlap in some of the questions. We can cover the most common questions that we have first. So let's see if I can unmute everyone. There, I've successfully unmuted everyone. So welcome, Laurel. Can you tell us what some of your questions are today?
Sure, it's actually Laurel.
Laurel, thank you.
Yes, no problem. I was muted, so I couldn't correct you at the first. My main question, and I think you actually might have answered an email that I sent, but one of the big things that we are looking for is the ability to create a form so that members and potential new members can come to our site and fill out the form with basic information and click join, and then the fields of that form are saved somehow so that we have access to them as admins.
Okay, that's a great topic, and I'll make sure to go over that today. I'm also going to be putting together a number of videos to cover forms, but we'll go over it today to get you started and see where you have the most questions.
Okay. The one other question that is a slightly less important to me, but like it looks like when you add, if you're adding, say, positions or calendar events, that you don't actually have control over what those look like when they are then moved to the pages that they will be displayed on.
Okay. There are certain controls that you have and some things that you don't. Some things are very specifically set and some things you can actually control. So we'll take a look at that as well. And as we're looking through these various things that you want to see, if you have recommendations for changes that you might like to see, please bring those up as well. And then I can talk over those with Elizabeth after the call.
Okay.
Great.
Wonderful. Are we ready to move on to see some of the questions, the topic areas that you would like addressed today? And I'm asking Rain Tyler, who is on the line with us. Rain, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I have real basic questions. We have lots of PDFs, which I know you're not fond of, that are in lieu. Can all those files that are in lieu, we cannot move, how can we move them over?
So yes and no, and there are other options, and we'll take a look at that as well. When we get to, we'll go down these one at a time, so I've made a note that this is a topic that you want to discuss, and I can assure you that there are good solutions for your concerns. It's just a matter of taking a look at your specific use case and making sure that we understand that what you're trying to do so that we give you the best recommendation moving forward, and really talk about why these are the recommendations. You could literally just set it up the way that it has been in the past. There's no reason why you can't do that, but we're not recommending it for a number of reasons. So we'll give you an idea of the tools that are available to you that will give you, in the long run, a better solution.
Okay. Right now we link, another question, we link to content on other league sites that are not, that are basically in lieu sites now. Can we still link to those files if we link to our state, for example?
Yeah. Yes, you can still link to whatever you're linking to that's external to you. Just keep in mind that as people move their stuff, those links could change.
Right, right. Can we also post links to PowerPoint presentations?
Sure. And okay. You can actually even upload PowerPoint presentations, so I'll make sure to show you.
Okay, that would be great, because that's what a lot of our PDFs are. So that would be helpful. And I saw there was a mention of small PDFs. I am not familiar with that. That was on the blog.
Okay.
I think she's referring to a compressing of size PDF software system.
Okay, so we'll talk about that as well. That's a good point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thanks for being here, Rain. And we also have Scott Starbuck on the line, and we're super excited you're here, Scott, because Scott's been doing amazing things with his website. So welcome, Scott, and what questions can we get to for you today?
Let me make sure you can hear me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. First of all, I love working with the site. It is just wonderful. I love learning about it and finessing it and doing all the things that I guess you're not supposed to be able to do on it, but I love being able to do that.
That's great.
Yay!
Okay,
you're supposed to be able to do whatever you figure out how to do. We just
I kind of figured that out, so that's cool. All right, I got a couple of questions. One is, when will the previous WVNet go dark, or can I just go in and delete it and put a forward to the new site?
When it will go dark, that's really a question for Elizabeth, but my personal recommendation to you is as soon as you like the site that you have on Milo, I would recommend that you switch over, that you archive your existing Lou site and point people over to Milo, because otherwise you're having to manage two environments.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I wanted to delete it, or archive it and point it forward. So okay, I'll do that as soon as possible then.
Great, and that's a great question, Scott, and we are actually in the process of working on documentation for what to do when you sunset your Lou site. So if you have additional items on there that you don't want on your current site, but you do want to retain them for records or whatnot, we'll be proposing a proper way to do that
Okay.
in the next week or so that you can, again, if there's files you want to hold on to for whatever reason, you can do that without loading them up to your new Milo site. And then the rest will be up to you for when you tell your domain registrar to point in the right direction.
Okay. Well, the domain registrar is LVW, so net.
Okay.
I'll just go ahead and do that. But I've already archived everything, and I have the complete website on my computer already, so I'll just do that today. Okay.
Wonderful.
And I have a question about linking from the state site. Well, and mostly because the state site or any other sites right now are pretty much non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have an estimation of when the state site will go to the LVW or the LU, yeah, my LU, when it will be converted over, so that the linking will be made much easier, and I don't have to update the links from other sites.
So Scott, I might jump in and try to answer part of this, Rain. Scott, I forgot what state you're in.
California.
Oh, you're California. Well, we have our California shared content already up, so you can make use of that. And I think, Rain, perhaps we can show how to, if you're interested, show how to share content from other leagues. So if there's neighboring leagues that you're interested in. And as far as the shared content from our headquarters at LWVUS, we anticipate that to become available in late October or early November.
Oh, okay, good.
And I think you had another question in there, Scott, because you're talking about linking to LWVC content. The LWVC site, their main site, it's pretty huge. So in terms of the ability for them to spend time to move over to Milo right now, that's not, I don't think that's in their immediate future. Elizabeth would speak to this better, but instead what they're doing is they're making sure that all of the action alerts and announcements and events that really need to be accessible to California leagues as shared content, they're going to be putting those up in Milo. So if you're linking to other types of stuff that's already on LWVC or CA votes, you wouldn't be able to use that little link it tool, because that stuff is not actually moved over, at least not yet.
Okay.
Yeah. So LWVC in a way is going to operate with two sites for a while. They'll operate with the Milo site that has the content that should be available to all the California leagues, and then just kind of their isolated silo, since that was built before and is running, and their priority at this moment is making sure that Milo works as opposed to moving their site to Milo.
Okay. Great. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So more questions may come up as we start going through these, but Elizabeth, unless you say otherwise, I'm just going to start from the top on web form and then move down the list.
Great. Let's go.
Okay. So going into web form and how to work with web forms. So I'm on a demo league right now. This is the local league. It is active and public, and I'm logged in as somebody who can work with that league. When you're on your league, you have this administer league menu here on the left, and one of those items is add form. Web forms are fairly complex, so they're not the prettiest in terms of user interface, but the functionality is pretty sophisticated. So as I mentioned before, I'll be making a string of videos to help support this, to help make it easier to figure out how to work with forms. But if I click on add form here, the first thing that I get looks just like if I were creating a page on my league site. So this description up at the top, this is not where I put my form in, this is just where I put in information about the form. So I'll give it a title. And then I'll just give it a description so that you can see what this looks like. I'm using lorem ipsum, randomly generated lorem ipsum. I can put embed code in here if I want to. I wouldn't recommend that you put embed code in on a form, but you certainly could. If your form is related to committees, if you have committees, all of these standard settings that you have on your page when you're creating pages on your site, they're all basically exactly the same. But once I do this, I'm going to go ahead and send it straight to published. And I'm not yet putting it in a menu or anything. I'm just creating it. So now there's no form items on here, but this is form content. And you'll notice that the tabs up here at the top are a little bit different from the ones that you have on your regular pages. Let me just open a regular page so that you can see the difference here. So on a regular page up at the top, you have view published, new draft, and moderate. And if you had a draft, you'd have view published, view draft, new draft, and moderate, or edit draft and moderate. But when you're on a web form, you also have these additional two tabs up here, web form and results. And web form is where you'll set up the fields for the components on your form. And you'll also set what happens when a user fills out the form. Results is where you can see any submissions that have been stored. Just so that you know, you can set up your web form to send those submissions to an email or to various emails depending on what the user has filled out. But even if you do that, you'll still have that data being stored in a table in the results tab as well. So you'll always be able to access that unless you clear that data, which you can do also. So if I click on the web form tab here, now I have 4 new tabs. And this is where it gets a little bit complicated. Form components is where I set up the fields that'll be available on the form. Conditionals you probably won't want to use unless you're an advanced user. So if you feel like an advanced user and want to be adventurous, then I would invite you to play with conditionals. But what conditionals are basically a setting where you say, if the user says X to this question, then give them Y and Z. But if the user doesn't say X, then don't give them Y and Z. Let me actually show you a situation where we have a form set up that is using conditionals to help explain that. In the article content type, when you are building an article, you'll see this additional details box right here. Different types of articles might actually have different fields associated with that type of article. This is a set of conditionals right here. So that's what a conditional is, and you would set that up under this tab. So consider this an advanced tab that you're only going to use if you're really feeling like digging into to advanced functionality. We'll skip that here in the office hours unless somebody's specifically asking about a conditional functionality. Emails is where you'll set up if the form is going to get emailed to someone when it's filled out, whether that's to the person who fills it out or to some email address based on settings within the form or based on defaults, and I will show you that. And then form settings are just a couple of advanced settings that you have that allow you to change some of the behavior. Okay, I think I've been unmuted. Thank you. So what I'm going to go ahead now and do is I'm going to create a couple of components. First, I'm going to open in another tab the view version of this form. So here's the intro that we have. The share button is even included on here. And then here's the form itself for the form components where I can start setting that up and building that. So first I'll just put in standard email address. You typically are going to want to include email address as a field. In here, I'm going to be semantic about my choices for what type of field this is. Always take a look and see how specific you can be for your field because, for example, for an email, there's additional functionality that becomes available if you're careful to select that you want it to be an email field. Typically, most of your fields are probably going to be text field or text area. text field would be a one-line field, whereas text area is a multi-line field. Or select options. Those are going to be your standard fields. But in this case, it's an email field, and I do want to make it required. So now I would go ahead and add this component. There's a few more bits of information that I can fill in here. For example, if the user is logged in, do I want to use their email address as the default? And I'll go ahead and say yes to this. You'll see what happens when I save this. And then you can make some adjustments here. You can allow multiple email addresses. You can add some help text. Let me just put a little blurb here. That's quite a long blurb. You can recheck whether or not it's required. So you'll definitely want to look through all of these different options. These all kind of have to do with display and so forth. But for the most part, you're going to leave everything in its default state. Now I have a component on my form. If I reload the form itself, now you can actually see the form because I do have a component. I have that description that I entered. It is set to required. It is using my email address. This is a fake user account that I've created for the purposes of demonstration, so it's using my personal email address, not my work email address. And it has that, and it has the submit button. So just by adding a single component, I've now turned it into a form. Let me go ahead and add a select list and I'll add a text area as well because those are two things that you might want. So we'll start with the text area. Typically, hopefully, if somebody's sending a form to you, they're going to send a message of some kind. So that would be a text area, a multi-line option. I'll go ahead and add that. And we don't need anything in here, so I'll go ahead and save that. Oops, I saved that too quickly. If you see what you just saw there where it says it can't do this, it just means that you're acting faster than a human should act. So it's not registering you as a human. It would have assumed that I would have had to read a few things, and I've done this a million times, so I didn't read things. So now I get this message field that I just created. And now let me add a select list. Let me do an example that's going to be a common use case that you're going to have. You can add select lists of various types. You might want to offer people various, if you're having an event, for example, and you want a form that's a registration form for the event, maybe you want to ask people what type of meal they want. So you're going to give them a select list for the type of meal. Or if you're doing membership form, you might want to ask them what type of membership they want. Are they a student, or are they, are they a family, or are they an individual? So you'll want to offer that. But another option that you may want to use is if you want to turn this form into something that will email a specific person when the form is submitted based on a choice. So let's just call this interest, and I'll make this a select list. So I'll choose select options. I will make this required. So now everything is required. And what's going to happen down here is under options, you'll see this description here that says key pairs must be a safe key and then something readable. So if you were doing membership type, then it would be something like student, student membership, because a safe key does not contain any spaces, and it gives you that explanation here. And then your next line would be, family membership, and so forth. So what you're seeing after this little thing here, let me zoom in on this. This is called a pipe. Hopefully you can, I'm zooming way in, hopefully you can see that. So this little line here is called a pipe. It is on your keyboard. It's usually right under the delete key. And so that's what you're putting in between your key and what the user sees. This next part is what the user sees. Now the interesting thing is if you're trying to do something where you can send an email to a specific individual based on what they've selected here, your safe key is going to be the target email address. So let's say you have you know, webmaster@myleague.com, and then website feedback. And then you have donations at myleague.com, and then donation inquiries, and so on and so forth. We'll just start with those two as an example, but you can make this as many as you'd like. You can allow them to choose multiple values. You can allow them to put in another option. You can, if you're doing days of the week or countries, you can pull from a pre-built list, or US states. Those are pre-built lists so that you don't actually have to populate it yourself. So if you have, for some reason, the need to do one of those options, you can certainly do that. You can also choose whether or not this shows as a list box or as radio buttons or checkboxes. There'll be checkboxes if the user is allowed to do multiple. There'll be radio buttons if the user is only allowed to do one. And if you choose list box, then it'll turn it into a drop-down list like this. So in this case, I'll go ahead and choose list box. And then I'll go on, I'll save this component, and let's zoom back out, reload so that you can see this. So now I have the interest field right here. I have the two options that I created. So if I select one of those, it'll be basically targeting that email address. Or it could, I can set it up to target that email address. Right now it's just data. The other thing that you should be able to see here is you can reorder your form items by simply dragging and dropping the same way that you can do on your menu. So I'll move interest up, I'll save that, and reload. So now interest can be selected here. Now let me just quickly fill out this form so that I can show you what that results table looks like as well. So I've just filled out the form, it's been submitted. Go back to form. Now if I go back to the form itself and I click on the results tab, I have this one submission. And this obviously doesn't look beautiful. This is the submissions right here. I can click to view that submission itself specifically, or I can go to table, and then I can see all of the submissions in table format, which I can also download. Okay, so I'm gonna quickly go back. Please feel free to stop me. This is fairly informal, so if I've lost anyone so far, just stop me. And okay, so now going back to all of these settings where you can actually set up the components on your form and the form settings, I want to quickly look at emails and form settings. So under emails here, there are currently no emails sent when the form is filled out, but I can add a couple things. So let's say I want to email the user who emailed me, or the person who emailed me. I want to email them a response saying we received your message. So what I would do is I'd say the email address to which this email should be sent is whatever was filled out in the email address field. And then from there, I can go ahead and add, I can change who it's from. The default email address for the site is support@lwvc.org, so obviously you would want to change that to your league, to a message that makes sense from your league, because you're not sending from Milo, you're sending from your league. And then you can change, these are what are called tokens, so these are dynamically adjusted pieces of content that will fill in when the email is sent. So it'll send with the user's name, for example, or the date that it was submitted. But you can delete and change all of this and then add your own message that you want to send if you'd like to. And then indicate which pieces are included in their message. So This is where you would set that up. Now, if on the other hand, you wanted to set this particular email up to email whoever the person chose when they set an interest, what you would do is you would say, send this email to, and then you would choose that field that we created, interest. Let's go back here, this one. Remember, each of these, the safe key on each of these is an email address. So as such, I can tell it to choose that email address. It also will allow me to overwrite that, by the way. So we set up a safe key with those, but I can go ahead and change that here if I want to. If I don't want to use that safe key, I can change that. So that's pretty cool. That's actually fairly new, and a change to how the module works, that you can override that, which is great. And then you can make these adjustments to say, well, what should whoever receives this email see? So that's how you would set up sending an email to someone based on what's filled out in the form. The only other one I want to look at before moving on is form settings. So you saw when I filled out that form, I got a little message that said, your form has been submitted, and that's, it was kind of on an isolated page. I can change what that message is. I can write in as complex or not of a message as I want to, including if you're doing a join form, you might want to put your PayPal embed code right here and say, okay, now that you've sent in your join form, please pay your fee on PayPal or send us your check to this address. You can actually put that right here. Or you can set other parameters based on how you want the user to get information after they've submitted the form. And then you can limit submissions if you want to. So, if you only want to allow 3 people to fill out a form, you can certainly do that. You can also close a form. You can leave it visible but close it so that people can't fill it out anymore. So that's an option as well. Let's say you have an event that you want to allow people to register for, but once registration is closed, you still want to leave that information up, but you don't want to allow them to continue filling out the registration form. That's why you might use this. And this is important too, who can fill out the form, general public and league member. So if you want the general public to be able to fill out a form, make sure that this is the default, that these two can do this. This will catch everyone, everyone who logs into the site or doesn't log into the site. But if you only want people who are members to be able to fill out the form, then you would uncheck general public, and then what would happen is that the public, if you made the content publicly visible, then the public would be able to see the form, but they would be able to see the page that the form is on, but they wouldn't actually be able to submit the form itself. And so that's an option that you have available as well. So you can see that there's a lot of kind of sophisticated settings that you might want to play with. The other thing that I want to show you is that you can allow your users to save a draft of the form and finish it later if you want. And you can also change the label from submit to something else. So, if this is a registration form, for example, you could change it to register. So now if I go back to the form, you'll actually see that change there. So those are all, it's a lot of information, but those are the basics of setting up a form. I would say that you should really kind of play with it quite a bit because there's a lot more that you can do than I just went over. But are there any questions that you want to ask before we move on?
I had a couple of questions. One was, is there any way for the information, like you had it automatically, the form could automatically be emailed to an email address, for instance. Is there any way to tie that in to users who are members who have a login on the website? So if I register and I join and I pay, I then am given my login information to access the restricted content on the site, the members only content.
Right. Oh, I see what you mean. So to have the submission of the form automatically create an authenticated user?
Yes.
No, you would still have to create user.
Manually.
And make them, yeah, you would still have to do that manually. That is a great idea for functionality. It's, you know, obviously the LWVC has to figure out resources for all kinds of functionalities. So, Elizabeth, this is one you asked me if I had ideas for things that would be great features to add, and this is definitely one to create a system where you could automate the creation of the member account directly from the form. But that is currently not something that. Yeah, that's a great idea. You would have to do it though yourself still.
And when you were talking about the PayPal, you said you could put PayPal right here. I was confused about where exactly that was, if that's something that's going to show up on the screen, or if you were talking about it being in like a confirmation email, hey, thanks for your registration, click this link to make your PayPal payment. Because ideally, I'd like them to do that before they close out of my website.
You can put it in the email, but you can also put it on the confirmation page that they see when they fill out the form.
Okay, okay.
So this right here, this confirmation message area, I'm going to switch out of my Rainbow Bright account for a moment. And I'm going to go over to, I wish I could remember which league it was. I think it's South Dakota. Because I did this for a league, and I believe I did it for South Dakota. Oh, great, they put up the, is it under join? So obviously the user interface looks a lot more overwhelming than it did when I'm logged in as me, as an administrator, so please ignore that fact. What I want to show you here is under form settings here this is actually mostly embed code, and what it is, it's this right here. This is their form from PayPal. So when somebody submits all of this is their embed code. So when a user submits the join form on the South Dakota site, then the confirmation message that they get after that submission is basically a thank you very much, and here's the PayPal form for you to fill out right now to finish your process, which is the payment part.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that's just because Milo doesn't actually have payment processing within it, so that's why you would connect to PayPal or Google Checkout or Square or something like that.
Okay, Rain, I'm also giving you a time check. We have about 20 minutes left.
Excellent. Okay, so position and calendar of events display. I definitely want to respond to this, and then we'll move on to PDFs. Let me go back to being Rainbow Bright. And there's another Rain on this call, so there's actually someone who appreciates what it's like to live life named Rain. And sometimes you have to have a sense of humor about it, hence my fake username is Rainbow Bright. So the positions and calendar events, or any piece of content on your site, gets to, it's formatted a very specific way, but you can also sort of control what displays. So, for example, if I'm sending something to the home page or to any list page, let me click on calendar maybe. So I'll click on calendar now. I can see upcoming events. So I'm seeing the image that's been put in for that specific event, and then I'm seeing the date, and I'm seeing kind of a teaser for that event. And this format is always going to be followed. It'll be followed on the front page, and it'll be followed on any list page that you encounter. But you can control what shows up as this teaser. And the way that you're going to do that is, let's go ahead and create a new article. We'll do it that way. So And this is true for any, this is true for any type of content. So demo article for office hours, I'll go ahead and give that a few paragraphs. And then let's say that, I've maybe done a list as the first paragraph, which is kind of a weird way to jump into a teaser. And I'll leave it at, at that. I'm just trying to create something that's going to look kind of ugly in the teaser intentionally. And then, I can put whatever else I want in here. As an article, I should probably put an image in here just to make sure that this shows up nicely. Let me find a couple demo images and use one of those. Okay, so I'll go ahead and set this to show on the front page because I want to really make this as ugly as I can. So I've promoted it to the front page and I'm setting it to published. And we'll go ahead and save this. So now if we go back to the front page, here's our demo article. And it actually doesn't look as ugly as I had wanted it to, but it still doesn't look very good. So this text right here, this text is always going to be plain text, and that's intentional. It ensures that things look clean. And I can control what's in here. Right now it's jumping straight into the list. It's just taking the first few paragraphs or the first few characters out of my post, which isn't necessarily ideal. I definitely don't want that list to be the first set of things that's displayed. I have other text that I want showing for my teaser. So if I want to do that, I'll do this as a new draft. There's this edit summary item right next to the label on this field. And if I click on that, now I have a plain text area. Remember that those teasers should always be plain text. That's how you ensure that things will continue to look clean. And then I'll take whatever text I want displayed there. And it can be any text. It doesn't have to be from this. It can, it doesn't have to be in this order. It can be something, a completely different paragraph. This is also, by the way, the text that would map to a Facebook share or a Twitter share or something like that is this text. So this is the text for kind of your summary or teaser that you want to use. So now I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I'm intentionally making a mistake here that I'll show you. So I've created a teaser. It doesn't in any way impact the view of the page. And if I reload, it's not actually going to take effect here. I still have exactly the same thing I had before. That's because when I saved it, I didn't publish my draft. So right now I'm actually looking at a draft, not the published version. So I'm going to go ahead and publish this. Now this is the published version. Still no change here. This is still leading in exactly the way that I had originally built it. But if I reload my home page where this is showing in the list, now it's using my nice teaser. So I've controlled what shows. The image field is always what's going to show here on the left. So that's how you really make sure that you have something kind of nice demonstrating on the left. And then that's how you customize what shows up in your teaser and really control how that displays and how you bring people into your content. Again, that's true for events as well. It's true for both. Any questions about that? Okay. I am going to call out Scott for a moment with this particular item because, Scott, I don't believe you're yet using front page content on the San Bernardino site. Right, so I just wanted to make sure that you could actually see that that's an option for you. The way that I did that, I sent that to the front page of the local site. And by the way, this can be anything. It can be a web form. It can be a page. It can be, your about page. It can be your donate page. You can literally put anything you want here. So the way that I sent that to the front page is, let me go back to new draft. Down here at the very bottom under publishing options, there are two settings here, promoted to front page and sticky at top of lists. So promoted to front page will show it at on the front page, and then sticky at the top of the list will push it to the top of the content regardless of date created. All of the content, all of the lists on the page will show the most recent item first, with the exception of events. And events will show upcoming events in ascending order. So the next coming event will show it at the top, and then it moves on in terms of time. In both cases, if you make something sticky, it will ignore that and it will move the item to the top. So you want to be careful with sticky because it does mess with the logical flow of your items. But if you have something really important that should be at the top, that's a tool that you have to always move something to the top, and that's how you can move something to the front page. Any questions about that?
Yes, I'm actually trying to see how to do it on my page right now, and I'm not on my page on the calendar section.
Mm-hmm.
What I do is I just click on event detail.
Yeah, oops. I'm going to masquerade as you here, and
Okay,
let's actually go ahead and walk through this. And this is important for everyone because it really gives you the ability to do cool things with your site. Okay, so on your calendars, there's a specific event that you want to promote to the front page?
I was just going to do the very first one,
Okay.
just to give me an example.
Okay, so I'm going to that specific one. I'm going to create a new draft of this particular event. And then I'm going to scroll down to the very bottom and click on Publishing Options.
Ah, okay, okay.
And then I'm going to check Promoted, and then under Moderation State, I'm just going to send this straight to Published. And I'll just make a note here, Rain promoting to front page, masquerading during office hours. That way you know what happened.
Okay.
Okay, so now this has been promoted to the front page. If we go back to the front page of your site and scroll down, there it is right there.
Okay. Okay, good, good. And now when September 21st arrives, this will be dropped off the front page because it no longer is there.
Right, which is tomorrow, I believe.
Yeah, it's tomorrow. So, okay.
Right.
Excellent. Okay. Very good. Very good. Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Wonderful.
And so moving on then, unless anyone has any questions about what we just looked at, I'm going to move on to PDFs.
Great, and to give you a time check, Rain, we have about 13 minutes left.
Got it. Okay. Hopefully that's enough time to talk about PDFs. Okay, so Rain, I don't know specifically what you're trying to do. I'm going to try to be very general at first and just give a couple of general notes on working with PDFs, which I think will be of benefit to everyone. And then I'm going to ask you to give me some ideas of some of what you're actually doing, and maybe I'll masquerade as you the way that I just did as Scott. But let me go back to being Rainbow Bright. Don't worry, I can do this, Elizabeth can do this, and Amrice can do this masquerading as other people, but nobody else can do this, so you don't need to worry about somebody pretending to be you. Okay, so going back to Demo Local, the first thing that I'm just going to show you is basic PDF abilities on your site. I'll do this, let me not do this in the About page, let me just create a new page. And so demonstrating PDFs. I'll put some text in here, and then let's say I want to link to a few PDFs. We'll go ahead and do that. in a moment. And then I also have, on this particular page, I have an attachments area. So I'm going to link to PDFs in two places. One place, I'm going to attach media, and I'm just going to do that first, and then we'll look at putting PDFs into the body. And this is not kind of bulk management or archive or some kind of a document library of PDFs. This is simply PDFs on your in your site or on your pages. Oh, and you know what? I think Scott actually had some questions about this as well early on, so hopefully this will help you a little bit as well. So I'm going to click on Browse right here under Attachments, and I'm going to see what PDF files might already exist in the system. So I'm looking at my files. I don't have anything. I'm looking at all the PDFs that are in the system. Because I'm using this Attachments tool right here, it's only showing me anything that's text, PDF, or doc. And actually, we need to allow more file types, I'm seeing, because that should be, this was initially set up at a time when the file extension was doc, but it needs to be docx, and we also need to allow PowerPoint and XLSX. So after this call, I'll make those changes so that by tomorrow you should be able to add these other file types. But right now, these are the file types that are in this form. So you can look at all files, but it'll only show you those files that have already been uploaded that use those file types that are available in those file types. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with what you're looking at here, you're looking at the media library. The media library is intended for images that you're putting into your site, or PDFs that might be useful to leagues, flyers, things like that you might have. And when you upload media, you can do a lot, you can tag media in a lot of different ways to make it easy for people to find specific things. There is documentation and there is a video on this, and I'll point you to it after this call. So I'm not going to go into that in detail right now. What I am going to show you is that from this attachment field now, I can choose a PDF and I can attach it to this field here, and then I can put in a description if I want to. If I don't put in a description, it'll show the file name on the site, but instead I want it to actually show something is a document about XYZ. I want to give some kind of information. I can add more if I want to. I'm adding from existing files. I could also upload a file if I wanted to. And so I'll just put in this one as well. In this case, I'll let it pull the file name. And then this is a basic page, so it has all of the page functionality. I'm going to take this straight to published. And now what you're seeing, so you have the text that I put in at the top, and then you have these attachments that I added. So it shows them in a table. For one, it's showing you the actual title, the actual description that I put in, which can be as long as I want it to be. And the other one is showing you the file name because I didn't put a description in. Just like with other things that you have on your site, you can reorder these attachments if you'd like. And then the other cool thing about this is if you have an attachment that you've added but you don't want to display it for some reason, so you want to leave it attached for a while but you don't want it visible yet, you can uncheck display, and then let's uncheck the display on this one, and then that item won't be visible even though it's still attached. So you still, as an administrator of your league, you still have the ability to see and access it, and you know it's there and you can easily put it back, but the public isn't going to see it because you've unattached it. So you can also add PDFs inside of the body itself, and I'm going to do that just by doing it right here as a list. So you can access that same media library that we went into to add attachments to the bottom of the page, which is where I would recommend you primarily add PDFs. But you can also add them in line in the body. And there's this button right here, Add Media, which you would use to add image, and it looks like an image because typically you're going to use this for images. But you'll see here that you can add pretty much any type of file that you want. You can upload that file here, or you can find something from files that have already been added. And in this case, I want a document because I'm going to show you PDF. Let's do this one, Election Protection Hotline. I'm going to select that and submit it. It's going to give me an option to make some changes. And now I actually have this link right here to that PDF. If I save this, save, this link right here that I just stuck into my page, it just downloaded that PDF, or actually it's not a PDF, sorry, it's a Word doc. So now I've just downloaded that Word doc. And if it were a PDF, it would have shown it to me, but the reason why it downloaded is because it's a Word doc, so the browser can't display that. I can also, have this text in the middle of my paragraph if I want. It doesn't have to be on its own. And this is a little bit wonky, but honestly, it's the easiest way for you to change the text after you create the link. This is the text I really want. Just start typing in the middle, and then delete the characters that you don't want. And that's really the easiest way to change the text. Again, it's a little strange, but it's without us doing something highly sophisticated on the back end that's going to require a lot of resources for the league to produce. This is kind of the fastest and easiest way for you to change that text. So that's how you can add documents, add links to PDFs directly in the body. So all of that just kind of gives you an idea of how you can add PDFs one at a time or other types of documents one at a time. Let me go ahead and save this. I'm going to show you another area where you can manage your files. And then we're going to talk about if you want to create some kind of a document library instead. So the other place to manage your files, let's go back to the League homepage. One of the links that you have here is Manage Files. And this gives you something somewhat similar to that media library that we were looking at. You'll see two links here at the top. When you click on that Manage Files link, it shows you your files. It shows you the ones that you as a person have uploaded. But maybe you want to see all of the files that are on Milo, not just yours. So you can click on Manage All Files. If you know who uploaded a file that you're trying to look at, you can type in the user or you can do a search for specific files. So this is going to give you access to all of the files on the system and allow you to work through them. If I want to only look at images, for example, I can look through images. And then it'll show me those items here. Okay, so then I can also add new ones right here. So this allows me to add any kind of file I want if I want to do it outside of the media library that happens when I'm creating content. If I want to just add in a bunch of files or whatever, I can do that here. But you really should be thinking about adding files to specific content based on the content itself rather than just kind of loading in a bunch of files. Milo itself isn't really intended to be a document library as much as it's intended to be a nice web environment. So for document libraries, you're actually going to be a lot happier if you use something like Google Drive or Dropbox and create a public folder that you then put publicly visible but not editable so people can't delete your files, and that you start putting that content into and organizing in there. Because if you do that, you're basically organizing it more in a way that you're familiar with for files and comfortable with. Let me just show you what Dropbox looks like really quickly. So this is a Dropbox folder right here. And these are my folders and directories. So if somebody went into one of these folders who had access to it, they would basically see the document structure the way that it was set up. And that's very familiar and comfortable. So that's what we would recommend for some kind of an archive. I see a comment has come up, and I think at this point we probably need to end the office hours unless there's any other questions. Elizabeth, do you want to take it?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And just to let you know that we have recorded this, and so in the next day or two, we'll post it if you need to watch again what Rain showed us. It's very helpful to watch it on your own time and fast forward through what you need to know. And if we haven't answered all your questions today, we have another office hours next week, and we actually don't have anyone signed up yet. So feel free to sign up again. You can also email me directly, as I have been doing with some of the folks on this call. So again, thank you so much. Do we have any final questions or final things you wanted to say, Rain, before we end our call today?
Not at the moment, except that I wanted to point out this this documentation and let you know that I have been adding to it, and some of what we just discussed, such as using the media library and library of PDFs and documents, is there are documentation pages and some videos for those things.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much to everyone for joining our call. And again, feel free to reach out to us with any questions, and we're happy to either make an appointment with you, answer through email, or point you in the direction of the answers that you need. So thank you again, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you.